Good morning. It is the time posted for a work session for the Board of Supervisors Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023 at 10:30 a.m. in the Board of Supervisors hearing room. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion. Roll call. Members of the board are here. Okay, I'll just do them. District 1.
Crosby, sir.
District 2.
English is present.
And District 3. Supervisor Judd here to represent District 3. When we continue meetings, sometimes I say, oh, we're all still here, but we had a break. So I'm glad we're all in attendance this morning. Work sessions are a time for county staff to inform and discuss agenda items with the Board of Supervisors, and public comment will not be taken. We do have people attending this meeting via Microsoft Teams computer or mobile app and via phone. And we will begin. We don't really have introductions today. This is a follow-up to a meeting we had. So we have one item for discussion this morning, and that is discussion and possible direction regarding county animal shelter agreements and projects. And I believe Ms. Gilman is on Teams with us. So Sharon Gilman, our Deputy County Administrator, will start us off.
Thank you, Supervisor Chairman Judd. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. Thank you for allowing me to present this over Teams today. I'm going to share my screen to show the PowerPoint. Okay. So the purpose of today's work session is a follow-up.
You're not sharing, Sharon.
We don't see it yet.
And testing. Can you see it now?
Got it.
Great. Okay, so the purpose of this work session is to follow up on our last work session held on July 27th to discuss the property tour of Marsh Development located in Huachuca City. As you'll recall, the sheriff brought that up as at the end of the last work session as a possible opportunity for the county. And then I also want to discuss some conversations we've had with partnering with Sierra Vista Animal Care Center on an expansion, as well as discussions we've had with Benson, and then explain some of the conversations I've had with USDA regarding the Bisbee project and how any changes would impact that grant.
Okay. Well, let's start with Marsh Development. And I did have a medical emergency that day and couldn't make it, but I know that Supervisor English went, and has been stated that there were quite a few staff. Can you tell us about that? I know that that's one of the options on the table. So if you could describe that, it's one of your bullet points. Or do you have it on in the next page?
Oh, sure.
I guess we're ready to move on. I see it on the next page.
So that property is listed at the time that we toured it, was listed at $570,000. I think the price has dropped a little bit now to $550 maybe. It's as you know, Marsh Development is a building contractor, so it's a warehouse kind of property with office space, and on the other side of a block wall, the Huachuca City informed us that an RV park would be going in directly across to the east of that property, and so the realtor reached out to that RV park owner, and they expressed that they did not have noise concerns at this time. Of course, it's not operational yet. So, and then there would need to be additional renovations made because that warehousing area does not contain plumbing for like the drainage systems that we would need for shelter, the kennels and everything. And then appropriate HVAC. There's just one HVAC unit for office space that's been walled off within that warehouse. So additional HVACs would be needed, of course, and some parking improvements. to the area. I can show you the listing with pictures that are contained in that listing if the board is interested in seeing more.
I think I've seen the pictures. Would anyone else like to see a little bit more of that?
I've been to the
You saw it in
site, so I
person.
need the pictures.
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. I don't think we need to see more. There's the question, it looks like here, of who would operate that shelter. And I have had conversations with the sheriff and know that it kind of would look like the ACOs would be interested in having their own shelter, and that possibly HSSA could operate that shelter if we were to go that direction. Is there any talk with HSSA that they might be interested in switching from their partnership in Bisbee to this?
I
Or do
did
you-
have a conversation with HSSA yesterday along with the sheriff. We had a phone call conversation with the CEO, Steve Farley, and he expressed concerns about switching from the Bisbee project just because that has their full force and effect. You know, they've been moving along on the Topherville Road Bisbee project all this time. And this would be an unknown quantity in that regard. So they want the clinic space that the Bisbee shelter has in its scope and the standard of care that they need to meet. They believe they can achieve through the Bisbee project rather than this one. So at this time, they are not interested in operating it.
Okay. Another concern I have is that it would be more county buildings, more county insurance, more county utilities, more liability as property owners to a new property that doesn't currently sit in our county inventory. Are there any other comments by board members? Sorry, I didn't let you talk.
I would be glad to save my comments until page number 6.
Okay. How about you? Any questions, comments? Okay. So the next page, go on,
Okay.
Ms. Gilman.
So in the course of the past couple weeks, I've had conversations with Victoria Yarbrough at the City of Sierra Vista she's the assistant city manager, about an expansion they're doing at the Sierra Vista Animal Care Center. And very rough estimates because, of course, additional studies would need to be done, but the first initial estimate is around $1.5 million in county funding to add on to the Sierra Vista Animal Care Center in a way that would allow the county to drop animals off there. The architect, which happens to be the same architect that we are working with for the Bisbee shelter, they would recommend a needs assessment of $35,000 to determine the appropriate number of kennels needed. We went with a rough estimate based on current ACO pickups and drop-offs in the Sierra Vista area. 200 dogs, 14 kennels would be needed for that amount of dogs. And the additional cost of those kennels is around $750,000 to $1.2 million. They would still need an isolation room, which they currently don't have in their expansion plans, I believe. And then, of course, all of that would require architecture and engineering costs. So all that funding we could put through to expand the animal care center. However, there would still be ongoing IGA costs for operations, meaning similar to how we have IGAs with Wilcox and Douglas. There would be an ongoing IGA cost for City of Sierra Vista. I don't know yet what those costs would be. I think that would be something we would need to negotiate based on the amount of funding that we're putting forth, if this is the direction the board goes.
When you say the amount of funding we're putting forth, that means if we put up $1.5 million into the Sierra Vista shelter, they might give us a consideration as far as what they charge per animal.
Right. That would be my hope, but I don't have any firm ground on that.
Okay. Thank you for going into that. I realize that was a recent ask, and you've had to, with Victoria, do a bunch of talking. So thank you. So what is the city putting in there? They putting some money in. Also, I heard they wanted to expand their shelter earlier.
Oh, yes. So they've already, it's a $2 million project for them, and they're
Okay.
already ready to start construction very soon. So they would need to know from us if they need to alter their plans in any way to fit this into their schedule. So this one is probably the most time sensitive for a direction from the board, just because of where they are in their construction process.
Okay. All right. And because of the current situation where we really are lacking facilities to keep our animals safely and securely, I think everything's time sensitive. Okay. I'm going to stop talking. Any other comments for this section?
I don't think this is an area that we need to go into at this particular point in time because Sierra Vista hasn't readily been upfront with us and wanting to work with us in the past.
Okay.
And so they wanted to be the sole provider there and send us elsewhere. Now they're looking to us for money, but they made no concessions that, well, you give us $1.5 million and we'll let you put this many dogs in per year, or no. It's just you give us the money so that we can build more and we'll talk later. Well, I'm not interested in that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? You're saving them for 6.
You betcha.
Okay. Go ahead.
Is it 6?
Okay.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the Benson shelter so that we can get to Mr. Crosby's comments.
Okay. So in the past few weeks, the Sheriff's Office has had discussions with the Benson shelter, and everyone's very encouraged by this conversation. Even the Humane Society has said that they would fully support improvements to the Benson shelter or things that we could do an IGA with the shelter. The Humane Society has been working with Benson and is very impressed with their operations and the leadership there. So I think, and from the Sheriff's Office perspective, they've said Benson's been very interested in wanting to cooperate in some way. So they are limited on space. So we would need to work through that IGA, and if there's ways that we can help them with space, I don't know what those are yet, but we can certainly start working towards that IGA with the Sheriff's Office and the City of Benson.
Well, looking out for Benson in my district, I'd certainly like to see us help them expand if there's some way we can. And I would hope with the large amount of budget we have that for this, I mean, I realize the costs are, still in front of us if we were to go ahead with the Toverville and the grant, but I would like to see us help improve their shelter and their capacity. No matter what other decision we made, I believe we have a need in that part of the county for animals to be housed there and sheltered there. So I'm glad to see that item. Staff will prepare IGA for board and council approval. So personally, I'd like to kind of move ahead with that. Is there any other comments from the board members?
I think it's always in the best interest of the county for us to look for partners. And if Benson now is wanting to become a partner, I think that we can come to the table and see if we can offer them help either with brick and mortar or whatever their needs are. And we won't know that until discussions have taken place. I don't think it has to be an either or.
Okay.
I think it's something that we should always be open to, working with Wilcox, working with Douglas, working with Bisbee, whomever comes to us. We have always tried to work in some cooperative manner in order to serve all of our interest.
And Supervisor English, you mentioned Bisbee. So, and we do have interest from the Bisbee shelter as well in what projects we choose and where we go. And I don't know that we shouldn't approach Bisbee again.
That's what I'm saying is let's not shut any of those doors right now.
So
I think that building a shelter doesn't happen overnight.
yeah, and we need support right now.
Shelter doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And so we should always be open to looking to, okay, how are we doing countywide?
Okay.
And obviously there are some gaps right now. and we need to look to see what we can do.
All right. I agree. Okay. Carry on.
Okay, and finally, over the past few weeks, I've had conversations again with the USDA to try to answer some of the questions that the board raised at the last work session, which was particularly how changes to the scope would impact the grant. And the feedback I received was that any change that moved the project away from Toverville Road would eliminate the grant. However, if there's something that comes along through our architecture, design, and engineering process that the architect says, clearly this building is not suitable and it needs to be torn down and we start over with a brand new building at that property, that's a change in scope that could be approved. I'm not saying that's what is going to happen. We are at the beginning of that architecture review, so it's entirely possible that the remodel will go forward as planned. It's just the board did ask what happens if we change the scope, and I wanted to explain that changes that move it beyond the location would not be within the scope, but a change that still at that location, but yet a different building project would be acceptable.
Okay. I am clear on that.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Crosby.
Thank you so much. Ms. Gilman, I hope that your health recovers quickly and you're back with us
Thank
soon.
you.
Ms. English's points are well taken. I'm going by interested constituents' concerns and ideas. And at this point, it looks like geographically diversify, which is one of the points that I believe Ms. English made, as opposed to solely marsh, the marsh development site, which I have nothing against. So my concern is primarily to not exorbitantly increase costs. So it seems like the Toveryville site and the USDA grant there would be best suited for partnering with Bisbee somehow. And I'm also in favor of partnering with the other locations that we've mentioned: Bisbee, Sierra Vista City, Benson, Wilcox, I believe, was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Wilcox is one of them. And
We partner with them now.
okay. Yeah, so in the interest of diversifying geographically and not making it a very long drive for any one person to get to the one and only site, that I'm therefore in favor of diversifying geographically. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Mhm. And if I may, that's an important point that Supervisor Crosby made about diversifying location, and what the Bisbee Shelter project does with the Humane Society is the Humane Society would be able to transport animals to Tucson should they reach capacity, or even throughout other states if their Tucson facility gets too much capacity. So it's that regionalization that I think makes all of these ideas stronger.
Okay, I have an additional question, Ms. Gilman, which I brought up last time, which was basically how can we keep from losing the 1.1 million? And I think you've touched on it a little bit, but was my interest last time we talked about it. And so it's still my interest that we keep that and put it so we can put it into the mix however it fits best. It looks like that it would fit best with the Bisbee partnership.
Yes, that's where it is.
Okay, so I was doing some thought and research on this topic of these other shelters that we want to partner with, and they are completely, we're seeing good things out of Wilcox, and we're grateful for them. And also the Benson shelter, we're looking in needs that they might have. And I did look up some temporary type shelters that could be moved around. And I think I sent that to you, Ms. Gilman, just to describe them for the board. They're basically panels and they lock together. It's a company out of Ogden, Utah that manufactures these. And it would be nice, I think, if the county owned 2 or 3 sets of, let's say 4 or 6 that could be transported if shelters seem to be reaching capacity and we needed to expand. So they could be used, if we have a partnership with Bisbee, they could be used there. They could be used in Benson or in Wilcox if they need to expand. And they're basically just a sturdy, heavy duty, made to do this. And there is a cover that kind of goes over it and sides that the cover just pulls on like an awning cover. It's a pretty interesting thing, and they're just a couple of $1,000 for a set of 4, I believe it was, and it goes up from there. So when you're talking just a few $1,000s to add 6 kennels or even 8, I think they make a giant block, but I would suggest getting either 4 or 6 that could be set up and moved around if we need them. But I kind of would like to look into something like that, because that would be available as soon as they could be shipped here.
I'm not against that idea, except for the fact that then who's going to move them around? I think if you're interested in that, that's something that we could talk with these partners. If they're interested, they may want us to buy something for them.
Okay.
But I don't see our animal control officers moving even temporary shelters from one place to the other. But if there are resources available and our partners would want that, I think that we could buy something like that, for them.
Okay.
And it would be theirs. When you're sharing something like that, there's always the problem of like, okay, who tore this up?
Yeah. Okay.
And so you buy it, you give it to them, they're operating the shelter, and then you walk away from it.
Okay, that's good enough.
And so I think
Thanks.
it's something you can keep on the table, the idea that if any of these groups that we're partnering with want us to come up with some temporary shelters,
Okay.
then we could look at that.
It just looks so easy on the video, like anybody could do it.
Right.
I felt empowered.
I just don't want to add one more thing to the animal control officers.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Moving kennels from Benson to wherever.
And then I would like to mention once again, I think I mention her every time, Nadine Schwartz, who has the Animal Rescue Connection in Wilcox. She operates it out of her home, but she's very skilled and has probably more connections than anyone with outside rescues and getting dogs even put on airplanes and sent to owners here and there and rescues. She just knows how to do that. She does not at this time have a shelter, but I hear that she's getting ready to put some, and she is a private, obviously a 501c3, but getting ready to put some kennels in her yard too, so she can kind of give us that service. And I wouldn't want to take a partner like that for granted. She has rescued a lot of dogs out of Douglas, which has been one of our concerns. And I see Kelly nodding her head in the ACO saying, yeah, Nadine. She really is a brilliant woman, and her heart is in the right place when it comes to that. And she serves the whole county, even though she's located in Wilcox. So at some point, just to put it in your head again, it might not be a bad idea to have some sort of assistance program or even partner with her as a private-public partnership. So just putting that out there. Is there any thoughts on that?
I don't know. I'd have to think twice about that one.
Okay.
She wants to work through one of the shelters we're cooperating with. It needs to be through shelters, not to us directly. You
Okay.
see what I'm saying? I don't.
If
Right
that,
now, I'm saying I don't think that's a good idea. I think the work session today, we can't make a decision, but I think the public needs to understand that we're going to move forward. And from the conversations that they've heard today, I think that we very soon need to put something on the agenda. We apparently have an architect working on the Toberville site.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, yes, that contract will come before the board hopefully soon. It's with the USDA right now for review.
and what she's saying, and I approve, is that, and I heard that from Mr. Crosby as well, I think the direction is to move ahead with that. Please.
Right. So we need to move forward so the public understands, and the people who are even with us today, understand that it's never been stagnated, but it takes time, especially on the grant. We can't go out for an architect until USDA says, okay, we like this architect. So you send all the stuff to USDA and they take ever how many days or weeks to approve it. But in the end, we're getting 1.1 million, for this project. And so, while it's taxpayer dollars from somewhere, it wasn't directly here in Cochise County. And so we're grateful for that the congressional people, put us on the list and we're getting some money. It's taking some time to do it, but, Sierra Vista's operating a shelter for a long time. They decided to expand, but it didn't happen overnight, and it won't happen, in the next few weeks. So let's see where they land. At this time, I don't think we need to shut out the idea of working with any of the shelters. We need to have a conversation with each one of them and find out what their needs are. And if it's monetary, if it's policy, whatever, needs to come to us at some point while we're working through this process, not waiting until we get the Culverville site built, if that's where
Right.
we're eventually going to, or renovated, I should say.
I have this final comment.
Yes.
The hard questions need to be asked of the possible partners, timing, experience, cost, etc., then decide. Perhaps all these questions will be asked and answered at the work session, August 22nd, 2023. Whatever the decision, the animal lovers of the county support HSSA operating their own veterinary facility and animal shelter in Cochise County. We support continued transport from Douglas to HSSA. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
I also want to make a comment. I do believe that we need to work through HSSA. They have a national recognition, national reputation. And so I believe that they are going to operate it in the best manner possible. And if the public has problems, they know how to answer those. They know what changes need to be made or not. So whether it's Steve Farley or someone else, that organization, I think, needs to be the umbrella that we're looking for in order to put this project together.
Okay. So we have a few ideas. Are you sure? Are you ready, Sharon, to move ahead with the things we've said? Or do you need
Yes.
clarification?
I think I have enough direction moving forward with my process on the Toverville Road with the architect, and then also pursuing other IGAs with Benson. I'll still continue to talk to Sierra Vista to determine if more information is available regarding those costs.
Well, we're willing to contribute a little bit to help according to their desires to help some of these like Benson Shelter to get capacity that they could be assistance to us. So we're willing to help them. We could possibly even help Sierra Vista if it's something very reasonable that we can afford. So the $1.5 million didn't look reasonable, or we really can't change to that now. Even though that was my wish coming into this meeting, it's definitely not my wish now. So it's not just about me. You heard what the board said, and it was all very good. Thank you. Okay. I don't hear anything else. Any comments from the board members?
How about I'd just like to keep the issue of an expiration date on the 1.1 million at the forefront of Ms. Gilman's attention.
Just to maybe alleviate some of your concerns, the USDA told me that if we get that contract approved, that would be considered significant progress. They understand that progress in government, any progress sometimes is significant. And so we would be okay by the end of the year to show that. And then we have 5 years from that point.
We don't want it to take 5 years, but
No.
partner with everybody we can. Thank you. All right. I don't think there's anything else that we need to give Sharon today. And thank you for attending, people in the
I think,
audience.
we need to make sure that we're having a work session, or if you want to say, to let the board know, and that's the only way we can do that is in a work session. Because people want to know, are we really moving forward? So
Mhm.
let's set something up, and I'd ask Mr. Watcher, what do you think is a reasonable amount of time to be able to chart some kind of progress on all of these?
Well, I think, and I'll defer to Ms. Gilman. She's leading this matter, but it would 1 month or 2 months be appropriate?
I think you'll see progress when we put the contract before the board for the architect. And so then I would want to have a work session probably after the architect has done some work. And we have an IGA. Let's shoot for in October.
Well, I was speaking not only about the progress on Culverville, but all of these contracts. So I was
Mhm.
wondering if we couldn't get back together at some reasonable point so that we had an idea of what's going on with Benson or Sierra Vista or
Sure.
et cetera.
Okay.
So is that 1 month or two? What, give us a time frame so we can put it on the schedule.
My mind is thinking of other things happening on the calendar. So I think end of September is a little tight, but we can try.
Okay.
Okay, it's not a matter of pushing. I think the public wants to see us move forward and we want to see some kind of progress taking place. So it's not a matter of we're going to have the Taj Mahal built by any time.
No.
Well, it was mentioned we've already worked on the IGA or beginning to work on the IGA with Benson. So let's don't stop that. And if that comes up, let's just call a meeting to talk
Okay,
about that.
let's talk
if that's
6
all
weeks.
it is.
Put it
So-
on the calendar for 6 weeks from now. And that'll be in October.
Okay.
But if Benson's ready sooner, let's
Oh, no,
go
I'm
ahead
just
and
talking
move
about
ahead with
meeting.
that.
If something happens sooner than that,
Yeah.
we can always put it on the agenda. It's
Yeah.
not a matter of-
Perfect. Don't wait. But yes, that's
No.
good enough. First week of October.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Are there any other comments now?
Thank
Here.
you, Ms. Gilman.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I did again. Thank you for being in the room today, especially the sheriff's department and the ACOs. That means a lot. I didn't see a lot of booing or hissing. Well, you're not allowed, but thank you for being supportive and doing the good work that you do. This is the end of this meeting. We will have another meeting today at 11 a.m., a work session regarding County Supervisors Association update.
And Madam Chair, can we have 10 minutes just so the room clear out and we can bring in
Okay.
representatives from CSA?
10 minutes. Meeting adjourned.